It seems like ever since Dark Souls blew up in the early 2010s, really hard games have been a genre unto themselves. Everybody wants you to get good. Play the really hard game for 280 hours until you complete that game of your own ability. Still though, people love really hard games for the delayed gratification of beating a significant challenge after a lot of work. Today I want to tell you about a game that's plenty challenging but strikes a nice balance by featuring challenging battles and disposable characters with permanent injuries and permadeath, all while staying accessible just enough for those of us who fall short of being a pro. I am, of course, talking about Entropy, a new indie RPG that came out about a week ago as of this writing. The game combines the aforementioned difficulty with a delightfully grimdark atmosphere that beats you over the head with the hopelessness of living in a truly dying world and instills a sense of paranoia, fear, and makes you hesitate to actually go out and do anything for fear of permanently losing something you worked really hard for. So stay a while and listen while I tell you about a tough-as-nails new game that's absolutely worth your time. The game opens upon the town of Draynog, where we are an actor in a traveling theater troupe in the middle of a performance in town square. Simply called The Player, our title is a pun on the early modern word for an actor. In Kingdom Hearts fashion, we answer a few questions to determine what our strengths and weaknesses are. You can choose to be male, female, or non-binary. I chose male because look how manly I am. I also chose melee because I'm a basic bench. Suddenly, in the middle of delivering our lines, the town is set upon by monsters. These creatures, simply called demons, have overrun the known world. Despite the town's fortified walls, the guards were tricked into opening the gate, and now the town is being sacked. The guards press us into helping defend the town. The basic combat mechanics in this game combine tactical RPG sensibilities with D&D-based D20 and D100 combat rolls. Each side has a front row and a back row, seen here. Entropy places a lot of emphasis on the tactical nature of these rows. Using most conventional weapons, the front row can't strike at the back row, and the back row can't strike the opposing front row. You can get past this limitation by using a pole arm, such as a spear, to skip a row, or range combat, such as crossbows, muskets, and magic attacks to hit anywhere that you like. Characters come in a standard triad of melee, ranged, or magic specialists. By placing your melee types in front with heavy armor and your range and magic types in the back row, you can usually protect your squishier characters while focusing potent back row fire on the most dangerous enemies in the opposing party. Heavy armor confers a defense stat that modulates how much damage you take. It can be defeated by breaking it with blunt weapons like a mace or with a musket. You could also bypass armor entirely with a magic character, but be careful because magic can backfire, causing you to take damage instead. It seems that no matter how high your stats, your success rate tops out at a 95%. Basically, rolling a 1 causes failure. Additionally, you have stats like agility that influence hit rate, although that's also affected by the battle skill you are specialized in, so there isn't as much a need to spend points into that. There's a heart stat that influences courage in battle. Seeing a friend defeated in battle causes courage to decrease, making them easier to hit. The stats and the row mechanics lead to some interesting synergies. I found an item that increases accuracy at the cost of evasion. Equipping it on a unit that shoots allowed me to reap the benefits with little downside. The equipment you find is RNG based, so you're always cobbling together the best offense and defense you can with what you find and supplementing that with what you can afford to buy at a store. The more members in your party, the less you actually make from each battle won, as every mercenary needs to get their cut. And so you can have as many as 6 active characters and 16 inactive characters. The game encourages you to recruit as much as you can, either through meeting characters or by paying mercenaries to join you. Unfortunately, the town guard and the theater troupe are no match for demons, and we are slaughtered wholesale. After this scene featuring a spirit saying, "This will have to do," we miraculously wake up, and our goal now is to escape from the ravaged town while gathering any survivors we can. So here's the thing about this game. Whatever you do, from taking damage, to losing a character, to using an item, is completely and totally permanent. Remember how fear and hunger impose difficulty with RNG and making saves few and far between, while also making it a serious risk to rest? In Entropy, the state of the game is saved after every combat turn and item used in the menu. If you try to cheese by reloading that save, you'll come right back to where you were before that combat roll. Now, while it might be possible to do the old Unity game trick where you back up your save and just use that instead, I haven't tried it, it's clear that this is not how you're meant to play the game. You are supposed to be locked in. If a character falls in battle, there's a significant chance that they'll acquire a permanent injury. This can take the form of a missing arm, meaning that the character can no longer equip two-handed weapons, or a lost leg, meaning they can no longer reposition themselves during a battle. Either way, these are serious consequences. Some injuries can be treated at an inn doctor, but some have no solution. Finally, it's possible that the character will simply die instead of taking an injury. It's all RNG, and while the main character can't die at all, meaning that there is no true game over state, you can permanently lose characters that you spent hours working to build from scratch, and I can foresee certain situations where you softlock yourself by losing your friends without the ability to hire new ones. Personally, I don't like this kind of thing. I'm not a play on easy kind of guy, but I'm definitely not a pro gamer. I screw up sometimes. Sometimes it takes me a long time to learn mechanics. Sometimes I like to kick back with a nice drink while I'm gaming and I make tipsy mistakes. I'm also just not the smartest. I don't know how to min-max in games, and my full-time job has relieved me of the time or energy to really try. In fact, I mainly play games for narrative fulfillment and the search for unique and interesting art styles. But most of all, just like when I played Fear and Hunger, a game this tough can make me too scared to actually play it. Scared to take risks. Scared to see what's going on over in that area. The game has various situations like this where you're prompted to make a choice in a given situation, and the choice affects the outcome. When somebody asked me to try and hunt down a monstrous beast so they could capture it to display it in a museum, I walked away, not willing to lose everything that I worked towards up until that point. But for a certain type of gamer, I bet they'd be absolutely thriving on this kind of thing. It isn't all bad though for those of us who aren't hardcore. The game has multiple difficulty settings that influence how often rolls get fudged by the game. Furthermore, I found that the game provides enough money from random combat to fund a steady stream of recovery item purchases. So if you're methodical, cautious, and make sure to grind at least enough to stay a level ahead, you should come out okay. And you can rest as much as you like with no risk or consequences as long as you can make your way back to town. The world map has random encounters, but enemy death is permanent within a dungeon or other area that you can enter, making the way back somewhat clear. We escape the ruins of the town after defeating this armored guy here. We march onward in an effort to get back to our hometown of Cuvas, but we find that many gates in the region are now closed due to a demonic quarantine. We learn from other refugees and the proprietor of the Blind Bat Inn that our only option is to plot a path through the dense and foreboding Canothag's forest. The world of Entropy is grimdark to the max. While the world was a bright place at one point, a series of plagues, demonic infestations, and disasters caused a gradual decline. Humanity is mostly confined to a few walled towns and travel is strictly controlled. It reminds me a lot of Warhammer, actually. The game takes place in the Gloaming Isles, a series of islands off of the main continent. Everything we hear from that direction is quite bad. Mysteriously, compasses in Entropy use the once great city of Tourmaline as a pole, meaning that directions are given as Torm words or Void words, depending on whether they're facing the city or not. The world is heavily influenced by magic and godlike beings called Makers. The world contains a number of soul gardeners, semi-omnipotent beings that straddle our world and the so-called other world. Without these beings, dying mortals are doomed to a dark death, that is, a death with no afterlife whatsoever. It's safe to say that the victims of the attack on Draenog suffered this fate as they were not buried with the proper burial rites. Horrifyingly, it seems that some gardeners create a tortuous and hellish afterlife for some souls based on their own personal whims and grudges, not unlike the gods of Greek myth. Magic users fall into one or two schools. There are Shapers, that's a school of magic that influences the physical alteration of the world, and Channelers, who tap into discussion with the spirits of the other world and seek intercession. Shapers tend to use direct damage spells, but can also heal and repair damaged armor during battle. Channelers, on the other hand, focus more on buffs and debuffs. Depending on the situation, you may want to have one of each, or you may prefer two or more Shapers. Canothag's forest has us battling otherworld spirits in order to advance. These can't be harmed with mundane weapons, so you need to get soul moss, which drops from these snail monsters in the area. You can actually skip having to do this entirely by having your melee units take the Attuned perk at level 3, perks accumulating every 3 levels. Canothag himself is pretty tough, but as you'll soon find out, much of the battles in this game hinge around setting up your back row correctly to do as much damage as possible. The Gifted perk allows casters to avoid taking damage on a failed spell cast, which really helps things along. Having escaped Kanathag, we finally reach Cuvas, where we learn that our theater troupe is a spy ring of sorts, meant to be the ruling peacekeeper's eyes and ears in the land. The previous pageant master, having acted as spy master in her time, passes the task on to us, and we get to rename the troupe. Our next mission is to reach the embattled main continent by crossing through the mountain fortress and catching a ferry from the port of Hafren. The game has a small number of side quests. When we first reach the Blind Bat Inn, we can make use of the machinery in this tower to signal ahead to Cuvas that Draynog was sacked. It seems like you get one chance to get this right, so you better write down what the old man tells you and move the device correctly. I assume if you do this wrong, the conditions are a lot worse once you get to town. Additionally, there's a side quest in Cuvas where you learn of the sudden silence. Decades ago, Cuvas used to have devices equivalent to real-life TVs, where people could watch live performances by the actors. One day, citizens watching began to experience hallucinations, and many were driven mad. The city responded by keeping all the machines off ever since. If we make our way to this tower and fight our way inside, we find out that the entire phenomenon was the work of the soul gardener, Aislinn, who merely wanted to share the wonders of her own afterlife with the living. Little did she know what would happen to those who saw it. We're given the option of reactivating the machines to complete Aislinn's goal, or simply alter the machines in a way so that it can only show old broadcasts. I chose the latter, as who knows what would have happened otherwise. If you choose the other option, can you tell me what happens in the comments below? The fortress is fairly straightforward, having been overrun by demons. We need to battle our way through so we can unlock the gate to the port. At the end of the dungeon, we meet this guy, Vartano, taking the name of the ancient king mentioned in a play at the start of the game. He implies that the demons attacking humanity are a hive mind whose purpose is to perversely end suffering by destroying all there is in the world. The first battle has him hit fairly hard, but not so bad if you make use of the musket and the high damage Phage spell. I purchased this spell as well as a healing spell from the Shaper's Tower near Cuvas. Be sure to max out your caster's magic stat to minimize the fail rate. The second form was absolutely harrowing. I thought for sure that I was going to lose at least someone, but I looked out big time and everybody survived. Again, make sure you set up your back row. You may want to spend the money to get 3 casters instead of the 2 that I had and just use them like artillery. The front row should be using healing items as much as possible to keep everybody alive. We open the gate, head on through, and that's the end of the game. Okay, so maybe I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the game, as you can get it now, is just the first act. The game is in early access, and if I understand things correctly, those who purchased Act 1 will be getting the rest of the game as it releases at no additional cost. Still, I really enjoyed my stay despite how much trepidation I had while I was playing it. I recommend this game wholeheartedly to anyone who enjoys a challenge and isn't afraid to see their progress wiped out or their labors come to naught, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we run up against in Act 2 and beyond. Give the game a shot, I think you might like it. Alright, that's it everyone. Thanks for watching. I love weird, strange, absurd, and surreal indie games, so if there's another game you think would fit in on the channel, can you let me know in the comments below? And if you want to hear about another unique fantasy game with a tough difficulty curve, check out this one right here. Alright, see you next time.